Okay, for the Hilo Vet Center. And so she's going to talk about the services, including the counseling services that are provided by the Hilo Vet Center. So without any further ado, Maricar.
Thank you all for having me. So my name is Maricar Souza. I'm originally from, thank you. I was born in the Philippines because my dad served in the Navy and got my mother pregnant twice and then married her, and then we moved to Hawaii. So that's how I came to Hawaii. So I served 6 years of active duty with the Army. So that brought me to places like Germany and Washington State and Schofield Barracks. So I was with the 25th. And then 20 years with the Army Reserves. But with the Army Reserves, I deployed twice. So I went to Iraq for a year, and then in 2003, and then I went to Kuwait for another tour for a year in 2006. Total 33 months away from my family. So yeah, it's a really big shock to the reserve unit at the time. And this was at the peak of the war, and it was always televised, and all of a sudden they're saying, oh, you guys gotta go. And this was like before Thanksgiving. So they told us, enjoy your holidays, because December, we're gonna go to Puakaloa to train, to drive every single vehicle that the 411 Engineers has, because we're a heavy equipment unit, meaning we're a bunch of engineers, carpenters, plumbers, electricians, cooks, clerical, all that kind of stuff. So we're just a group of us in Hilo. But total, the 411 Engineers was 600 of us, to include American Samoa, Guam, Oahu, Alaska. So, and out of that 600 was 75 girls. So we went to Puakaloa for the whole month. I had to drive the semi-truck, the Humvee. They said that if you don't know your jobs by now, then we're not going to retrain you on your jobs. You got to learn how to survive and come back home alive from Iraq. So we're like, okay. So having to do that, night driving, and then we went to Schofield for 3 months before we even went to Iraq, and we were locked down on the island. And then out of all the positions, the 600 positions that we had, some of them wasn't filled, because in Army Reserves, people would come in, get out. So they had to fulfill those slots to make a whole combined, battalion. So 23 of those came from other states. So those guys got their order saying, hey, you guys are going to show up to Hawaii to go to Iraq with this unit. And so some people from Kentucky and Texas got the word around Christmas. And so they're like, oh, so all of us were in this together. So luckily we all came back home alive, but it was an experience, because just being in the war itself, my old counselor, Felipe Sales, he's a former Marine Vietnam veteran. He said, when you come back from a war zone, especially like when he was in Vietnam, there's such thing as a high tempo, so there's always fight or flight. Military, there's no such thing as freeze. So if you come into a traumatic event, whether it's a car accident, fight, flight, or freeze, right? So for combat veterans, they're always at a high tempo. So how do we adjust from the high tempo to back to normal, civilian normal, right? So what he would describe is, so if it takes a person, from 0 to 10 to get mad, like you're calm right now, but if something happened and some guy came in and started yelling, you start getting, a little bit irritated, and then you start going from 0 to 10 gradual. For a combat vet, they're already at an 8. That threshold between 8 and 10 is never going to go back to 0. So how do we manage that fight or flight? I mean, we're always, if there's a loud noise, I'll probably jump higher than anybody in this room, right? I'm like, oh, who got hurt? You're like, the pencil just fell, the book just fell. I'm like, okay, well, it didn't sound like a book. It sounded like somebody banged their head on the ground. So, but that's me. So that's where I have to adjust. So readjustment counseling is just that, going from the combat zone to civilian life to the new normal. So the veteran is not going to ever be normal. Like something wrong with him, her, what's going on? Oh yeah, they're in the military, you can tell. The way they walk, the way they talk, yeah, he was in the service, right? And even me, when I'm in a place, like if I go to Kona and I was in a club one time, you know, one of those Lucy's, I think it was, and I saw a bunch of military personnel coming back from Puakaloa, and I could point out who was who. He's the officer, he's the sergeant, you know, you could tell just by the way they present themselves. They're in civilian clothes, but I knew. Even if I see somebody, you know, I just saw somebody with the Air Force wings. Like, you're a veteran, right? Yeah. I know, because you have the Air Force wings. So it's that connection. So the main reason why I have my job is because I am a combat vet. And because I am in the military, I can relate to other vets. So my title, and I have my brochure over there, my title is a Veteran Outreach Program Specialist, also known as VOPS. So they always call us VOPS. The counselors are readjustment counselors. So we're called Readjustment Counseling Services, also known as RCS. So the minimum that a counselor has to have is a master's in either social work or psychology. So my staff at the Hilo Vet Center, we're lucky enough, we have 2 doctors, and it's right now an all-female staff. So Denise Link, she just got her doctorate in psychology. We have Jennifer Glass, she has a psychology doctorate degree. I'm the Iraqi vet, and then Sam, he just retired, so that position needs to be filled. So we are looking for direct hire, meaning if you are married to a 100% service-connected vet, if you're a veteran yourself, or even a VA employee, we'll hire you as a office manager. They're called now Program Support Assistant, PSAs. They changed their title, so they're no longer office managers. And in the Kona Vet Center, we have Maria Sisio. She's a Iraqi Air Force vet, so she's a veteran. Jan, she's not a veteran, but she's one of the counselors. She has a marriage and family therapist license. And then we have our office manager, Delaney Morgan. She's not a vet. Denise and Jen are not vets too, but they used to be married to vets. And actually, Denise is still married to a vet, so they know how vets are. So yeah, the main thing for the vet center is they're looking at how can we relate to vets. So if they don't need counseling, then I help them with everything else. So for the readjustment counseling, we also help with military sexual trauma. So if somebody experienced, you know, assault in the military, could be male or female, chain of command, it doesn't matter, or if they were harassed or hazed, we can provide that counseling. We also open up eligibility for college students. So if that college student is now stressing out, you know, we can provide the counseling. So we did open up eligibility. We also open up to active duty, reserve, and National Guard. So, and then the bereavement, they would have had to have passed while they were in the military to provide bereavement. But then because I'm the outreach person, I can, you know, refer them to the outside community resources. So Hawaii Care Choices is the #1 bereavement on the island. They're the ones who have that floating lantern ceremony at Reeds Bay every May, once a year. And then they also do a visual lighting in December. So, and their bereavement services are free. So that's where I would refer them, because they do extensive. And we just had recently a doctor in the community, lost his wife, pretty much, you can figure who that out. But he's had a men's support group for bereavement. So all of these community resources I've connected. I've been in this job for almost 23 years. So I know a lot of vets. I mean, look, I know Kim. So Donna Kim. Well, no, Donna Shimizu. I'm sorry to call you out. But, you know, she's retired, and look, she's here today. And I just am there as a person that can spread the word. Kimo Alameda has an event coming up, and I put the flyer over there. I can't make it, I'm sorry, I'll be in Vegas. But yeah, I would love to have made that event. I was like, oh man, well, bingo comes first. But I also have swag. So this is the cloth to clean your glasses, and I thought red because university is red, so do take it. $8 in Ace Hardware, the black one. You get it for free. So if you haven't filed your income tax return yet and didn't get your refund, here's your refund. You paid for this, and the pen. So yeah, we paid for this to your government taxes, so do take as much as you want home. You can use it as stocking stuffers for Christmas, yeah. And it's good for your phone. Even that console, when you drive, all the fingerprints, it wipes it really nice. Yeah, so this is one thing that they have started because we're not allowed to do social media. Because, if we did before, 20 years ago, we could do whatever we wanted, but now we are keeping track with the government and their standards and everything else. So we're not running wild anymore, the vet center. We actually belong to the healthcare side. They manage our human resources, our IT support, and payroll. Other than that, we're considered a side branch of the VA. But this is our website. So I manage this. So if we was to scroll up, I have a couple events coming up. I don't know who's in charge of the computer, but if you was to put the page up, on the bottom I have a spotlight event, my fishing. So because I'm in charge of outreach, I decided to start a fishing group. Because a lot of our vets was like, hey, we fish, we gather at IOs, and if you see a lot of those veterans license plates, they're majority in my fishing group. So I've had the fishing group for about 10 years now. And every year for the past 8 years, I've hosted a fishing tournament. So we cannot ask for donations because we're a government agency, and we cannot promote for-profit businesses. So if somebody offers me stuff, of course I'm going to say yes. So the prizes come from Tokunaga Fishing Supply, and then whatever donations we get, like gift cards, and I usually put in stuff, and it's a potluck event. So I do invite Department of Land and Natural Resources, John Kayapo, he does show up. And what he does is he tells you the do's and don'ts about fishing. We only do shore fishing. We actually have a group that will do in the water, and I have that flyer, I should have brought it, but I have the flyer at the vet center. But you could do that. So the fishing one, we only meet on a quarterly basis. So I used to have like 70 people in the group sending out those invitations and wasting all those stamps, and they don't show up. So my requirement to be on the fishing list for me to tell you when our yearly event is you got to show up at least one time for the veterans. For the fishing tournament, we have 2 groups. So one group is the veteran group and one is the family and friends. So Donna, if you was to show up and you don't fish, but your grandkids do, we even open it up to if you catch an eel, that counts. Because, and eels are really long. But then one of the winners was a balloon fish, 17 inches balloon fish, but we measure from nose to tail, tip of the tail. And of course, John is there to, make sure that if it's the fish you're not supposed to catch, we will measure it and throw it back in the water, as long as he tells you to. But he does give the fishing guidelines and the ruler and it tells you what fish. And I do have that at the vet center. So the fishing one is a big one. Denise, our director, she has an art group. With the art group, there is a VA national competition, and it takes care of almost every single category you can think of for art. Dancing, singing, ukulele, art, sculptures. I mean, they have a whole bunch of things. For the vet center, right now we're concentrating on supplies that we can buy. We don't have guitars, but Honolulu has a bunch. So I can maybe borrow a guitar from Honolulu, but I do have drums because Felipe started a singing group. And he said, bring a drum, bring some spoons, no matter what. If you want to make music, make music. But we only had a couple people show up, so that musical group went away. But then if you are part of the art group, you have to be referred by a VA employee in order to go to the nationals. So one of our vets, he already had a bunch of paintings. He actually won one of the local ones to go to national, and the VA is going to pay for him to go to that trip. So the art group, the fishing group, and then we also just started a newcomers brief. The newcomers brief is for all those people who migrate from the cold, dreary mainland to the bright, sunny getaway to a remote island of the Big Island. So we're finding a big fluctuation of vets who do that. And I always ask the question, like, what made you come to Hawaii? and the east side of Hawaii for, all you know. And they want to live in the woods. And then this one vet said, when I came back, my family said, I changed. Something's wrong with me. I'm always mad. I just can't stand my family anymore. So I'm trying to get as far away as I possibly can so they don't find me. And I was like, okay, that's a good reason. So he moved to Puna, and he's in the woodland somewhere, and he doesn't mind living, like camping. But that was a choice in life. But then there's some vets who come and they're like, I didn't realize how expensive it was. Now I'm stuck here. How do I get off this island? So just answering questions like that when they come into the office, like, okay, and being nice, trying to be nice a lot of times. Because if a vet comes in agitated or mad or suicidal, we have to learn how to compose ourselves tactfully, professionally, Somebody's yelling at you, of course you want to, local style, tira, but they're like, no, I got to be nice, okay. And then, how may I help you today? So when they first come in, figure out what is their need. And then I ask the intrusive questions. Are you homeless? Are you married? You have kids. So just answering the basic questions. I found out one of the girls, she was in my Army Reserve unit, but she came into the vet center, and her and the husband came in for one of my benefits briefs. My benefits briefs, I usually host on a Monday. I started doing it just on Mondays, but it's about an hour and a half long, and I go over everything there is to know about federal benefits, from disability, life care, life insurance, home loans, everything, education, community resources. So when they came in, come to find out, they were both active duty, met in the military, 18 years old, got married young, have 2 toddlers, came on the island because that's the husband's home of records, and she was from the mainland. And she said, living on this GI Bill is not making ends meet. I got to pay rent and food, and then, and we don't have enough. And I said, well, do you know about WIC? No. Do you know about food stamps? No. I was like, go get it. Your income is tax-free. You're and your spouse. That's not your income. That is your tax-free education. It's like a scholarship. That's your GI Bill. You paid into it, your Chapter 30. So she was like, okay. So she finally, applied for all these benefits. She was like, now she get free food. She has medical for the kids, so even just that kind of stuff, the basic needs is the things that I want to help with, because I know how it is coming from active duty, reserve, trying to raise your kids by yourself, and I was a single parent. So I have that, not only the compassion, but I can relate. So a lot of times in my job, that's what I do. So when I first started the job, I was working for the 50s restaurant. And this was when I first came back from Iraq. My whole goal, because I'm food service, I was a cook the whole time in the military. I worked for hotels. I'm a baker by trade. I could do all that. So when I first came back from Iraq, my job was working at Don's Chinese Kitchen. And it was a shock to both him and I. Because when I first started working for him, I just graduated from college, and I was like, I'm going to get me a full-time job. I applied for 10 jobs. All 10 jobs said you're qualified, but I had to pick one that was around my kid's schedule, weekends off because I have drill, and I need to start my business too. So he was all in. I only worked for him for May when I graduated until December when I got my deployment orders, and he was like, what do you mean you got to go, war? I said, I got to go. The president told me I got to go. He's like, what you mean? You got to stay in Manila. I said, I cannot. You tell my boss I got to stay. And then so when I came back from Iraq, I didn't have my job. He said, you know what? I had to hire 2 people to take your place, and I'm going to have to fire them just for you to come. I said, you know what? Never mind. I'm going to start my own business. I'm going to go to college, get my bachelor's. No worry. So then when I was working for 50's restaurant, one of the counselors came in, and I was helping one of the customers. And he goes, we have the position at the vet center, outreach. I said, I know. That job was posted for 3 months at the unit. I can go out there and talk to people and public speaking. I'm going to own my own business. I'm going to be a baker, caterer, all this stuff. I said, yeah, but you're going to be doing the same thing you're doing right now, just talking to the vet. I said, yeah. So then he was a regular. Every Sunday come in, orders the same thing. And so the next Sunday, you applied? I said, no, I never applied. He goes, here's the application. I was like, oh, okay. So I applied. Sure enough, they had 3 people that applied for the position. So I was the girl and had 2 other guys. And the director at the time, he was in the National Guard, he was an officer. He goes, I'm going to hire you because you're the prettiest one. And I was like, really? I was the only girl. But then I got the job, and I've been here ever since. And I mean, knock on wood, it is one of the best decisions in my life because it's steady pay. And I thought to myself, if I was to work for the hotels or start my own business and something didn't happen, I would have dragged my kids along with me. So because I was so afraid that I couldn't have a steady paycheck, I was like, the government won't pay me. I mean, it's hard to fire a federal employee, right? And I'll get benefits. So that's the main reason why I have this job till today, is because, so yeah, I think it's a rewarding job. And then when I went to a job fair last week, the kids said, so they have a questionnaire. They said, so what is the best part of your job? I go, the pay. And they're like, really? I was like, yeah, other than that, then you got to talk to vets, you know, and you have to be personable. And they said, well, what does it take to have your job? I said, talking for one, public speaking, so speech and communication is the main part of my job. Because you have to be able to talk to people. I mean, it's not easy standing here and everybody looking at you, you know. So, I mean, everybody knows. If I got you to stand up and tell a story, you'd be like, oh, what do I say? So yeah, I think that's one of the hardest things about a public speaking job is having to talk to a group of people. And to me, I think one of the hardest things about customer service is being nice. Like I mentioned, that vet is coming in yelling at me, and I finally calmed them down and got them whatever resources they needed. I have to calm down and then be nice to the next person. You know, sometimes that's hard. You know, especially when I have anxiety and I'm like, I gotta breathe and stuff. So just learning how to do that. So yeah, I think I covered everything. So those are the 2 things we have, my brief. And I don't know, does anybody have questions about the RCS, about the VA, which is your family, your friends?
Are there limits to the counseling sessions at the
There's usually an hour block.
Okay.
But the main thing is that the veteran is the number 1 client. And if we do marital and family counseling, we'll do the screening first for the vet and then figure out what type of counseling that couple needs. You know, so they pretty much do everything. The only thing we don't do is medication. Of course, we're not doctors. They're only social workers. So so the main thing is that we do the readjustment counseling part. And then because they're doctors now, I think that they're probably one of the best counselors I've ever seen, because they actually do like college stuff, like EMDR and like they have like booklets and homework for vets, and I'm like, wow, they actually doing stuff, you know. The old counselors were just shooting off the hip, we call it in the military. It's like, yeah, they'll talk about their stuff and then they talk about the vets. And sometimes they'd have people in there for 20 years. I'm like, aren't they healed by now? You know, because I'm not into counseling. I don't know what they're doing, but I'm like, ain't there like a progression and like something? They said, so these new doctors, they said, well, we work on one thing, and then sometimes the reason why they stay is because we're working on several things. Relationship, work, then we work on other stuff, anger management. And then at the end, they have like a plan, and then you meet the plan. So I'm like, great. So I promote that now with at least the Hilo Vet Center. So yeah, I think we're probably one of the best places to come into is the Hilo Vet Center. Yeah. You had a question? Direct hire, as long as you're a veteran, and if you have disability, that's an extra. And then also if you're a family member of a veteran who's 100%. That means that we don't have to post it on USA Jobs, we can hire in that position. So the position that we're hiring right now, we're gonna have a counselor position open pretty soon. It's not yet open, but the office manager. It starts off at a GS7 GS6 and goes up to GS7. But that's the most you're gonna get out of the office manager. So.
Other questions? Do you guys help out with vocational rehabilitation? With
Yes.
students?
Now it's called Veterans Readiness and Employment. So you're a veteran?
No, I work with the registrar's office.
Oh,
so
okay,
I'm
okay.
in Manila. So, and I remember when I was a student, I don't know if we would send students to you folks to help
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
wondering if you guys are still doing that, or
I point them in the right direction.
okay.
So I can print out the application, I can go over what it means to be qualified for VRNE, at least the goal. And I always recommend applying. Don't let me, dissuade you from doing something. I say apply, and all you're going to get is a yes or no. But then these are some tips. These are some things that you may want to mention when you do it. Yeah. So the VRNE is Veterans Readiness and Employment. So if they have an employment handicap, like say they want to become a fireman, policeman, but then now physically they cannot get that job. So forget fire science and police, whatever, the academic part. They want to become an auto body mechanic and maybe want to start their own business as an auto body shop. So they can take the auto body because they still have to work around disabilities, right? So even if they can't lift a tire, maybe as a business owner, they can hire somebody to lift a tire. So their goal to VRNE is say, because I can't do this, I want to do this instead. So now I have to take business management and auto body. So that when I open up my own shop and then convince the VRNE that that is needed in the community. Because if there's 1,000 auto body shops and they're not making money, it's like, I don't think we're going to support that because we're going to send you to college and then you won't get the business because there's too much competition in Hilo. Maybe do it in Ocean View because there's no auto body shops in Ocean View. Maybe then we can support you, something like that. I mean, I just made that up, but that's what they're looking at. Like they're not going to waste the government's money sending you something that you're actually not going to be able to get that job. So, but with the VRNE, they give you whatever books and supplies you need. So one of our vets had $40,000 worth of tools that the VRNE paid for. So that's why I tell the vets that trumps the 9/11. Because the 9/11, you have gained since you've been in since 9/11. And then they count total months that you did active duty towards how much percentage of 9/11 you get. So like for me, I only did 33 months. So I was 3 months shy of getting the full 100% 9/11. So instead of getting like, $1,500 a month, I was only getting like $1,100 a month for the 9/11. And $1,000 a year for books and supplies, that's all you get, but they do pay tuition. With the VRNE, they do all of that plus above. So if you need a laptop, scanner, printer, ergonomic chair, they'll provide all of that. So that's why I say save your 9/11 and your Chapter 30 or your 1606 or whatever GI Bill, Chapter 35, that's all the different GI Bills. Use the VRNE. And then they'll get you to the highest goal that they will support you to achieve. Yeah.
Other questions? Why don't we get Maricar and then we'll applause.
Thank you.
Okay, so next week we have Similar Victory from Kupu talking about conservation efforts on Hawai'i Island. So that'd be an interesting one to talk about. Okay, a couple announcements. Get plenty of food. As you know. So take some food with you. And if you could please go ahead and, as you grab that eyeglasses cleaner,
We have plenty.
QR code. We appreciate that. But other than that, thank you everybody for coming. Have a great weekend.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.